Welcome back. I'm your host at Navy Legends, and I want to begin this one not with a weapon, not with a ship, and not with a coordinate. I want to begin with a decision tree, because what happened in the Taiwan Strait on the morning of November 3rd, 2026, was not primarily an engagement between weapons systems. It was an engagement between decision-making architectures, between a U.S. Navy combat system designed around human authorization at every critical juncture, and a People's Liberation Army Navy autonomous surface vessel swarm designed to generate decisions faster than any human being can process and authorize responses to them. It was, in the plainest possible terms, a race between human cognition and machine velocity. And for 11 minutes and 23 seconds, it was genuinely unclear which one was going to win. The date is November 3rd, 2026. The time is 4:11 local. The Taiwan Strait, approximately 62 nautical miles southwest of the port of Kaohsiung, Taiwan, in international waters of the Strait's Central Line area. The water depth here is between 40 and 80 meters. Shallow, complex, contested. The Taiwan Strait is 180 kilometers wide at its narrowest point. It carries some of the densest maritime commercial traffic on Earth, an average of 250 to 300 commercial transits per day, ranging from fishing boats to 400,000-ton bulk carriers. Every radar return, every AIS contact, every thermal signature in this body of water exists against a background of commercial traffic, so dense that a human operator sorting through it is permanently at risk of missing the one contact that matters. The USS Shiloh, CG-67, a Ticonderoga-class guided missile cruiser, is conducting a Taiwan Strait transit in company with the destroyer USS Mustin, DDG-89, as part of a routine freedom of navigation operation that has been standard U.S. practice in the Strait since the 1990s. The transit has been announced, as required by international law. The People's Republic of China has lodged its standard diplomatic protest, as it does for every U.S. Strait transit. The track is 340 degrees, true. Speed 16 knots. The operation is, by the assessment of every analyst who briefed the commanding officers before departure, routine. Routine is a word that will not be used again after this morning. At 4:11:18, the Shiloh's SPY-1B radar, operating in its standard surface surveillance and air search mode, registers a contact anomaly. Not a single new contact. A cluster. Specifically, 14 new radar contacts appearing simultaneously from a bearing of 278 degrees, range 31.4 nautical miles, all accelerating from a near-zero speed to approximately 38 knots. The contacts are small, radar cross-sections in the 0.8 to 1.4 square meter range, consistent with high-speed surface vessels between 8 and 15 meters in length. They are spaced between 600 and 900 meters apart in a loose formation that is spreading as they accelerate. And they are not broadcasting AIS identification. The Shiloh's Surface Warfare Coordinator has the picture in under 4 seconds. He calls it immediately. TAO, SUWC. 14 surface contacts bearing 278, range 31. No AIS. All contacts accelerating. Assessed speed 38 knots and building. Formation spreading. Assess possible USV threat. Unmanned surface vehicles. In 2025, the People's Liberation Army Navy publicly acknowledged the operational deployment of the CIWS series of combat autonomous surface vessels. Fast, radar cross-section optimized, armed with short-range anti-ship missiles, and designed to operate in coordinated swarms under remote human oversight. The assessment distributed to U.S. Navy commanding officers in the Western Pacific Theater, 16 days prior to the Shiloh's transit, noted that PLAN USV assets had been observed operating from a forward logistics facility on the Penghu Islands, the Taiwanese archipelago 50 kilometers west of Taiwan's main island, and from a planned surface combatant positioned southwest of the Strait's central line. The assessment rated the probability of USV deployment against a freedom of navigation transit as moderate. It did not define what moderate meant in operational terms. It did not tell the commanding officers what to do about it. At 4:13:02, 1 minute and 44 seconds after first contact, the Shiloh's TAO has confirmed track quality on all 14 contacts and has transmitted the contact report to 7th Fleet. The contacts are now at 28.1 nautical miles, closing at an assessed 42 knots. At that speed, they will reach gun range of the Shiloh in approximately 24 minutes. They will reach anti-ship missile release range, assessed at 4 to 8 nautical miles for the CIWS's onboard weapon load, in approximately 18 minutes. The rules of engagement governing Taiwan. Strait transits are specific about one thing and ambiguous about everything else. They are specific that U.S. forces may not fire first against unidentified surface contacts unless those contacts have conducted an overtly hostile act, defined as weapons fire, a collision attempt, or the detection of weapons system activation. They are ambiguous about what constitutes weapons system activation for an autonomous surface vessel that carries missiles in a stowed configuration and may not activate its fire control radar until seconds before firing. The Shiloh's commanding officer, on the bridge since the first contact report, is facing a decision tree that the ROE architects did not fully anticipate. 14 fast-moving contacts of probable hostile origin, closing at 42 knots, with a timeline to weapons release that is measured in minutes, and a legal threshold for engagement that requires evidence of hostile intent that may not appear until the missiles are already in the air. He has 3 options. He can engage the contacts now with the Mark 45 5-inch gun at maximum range before they reach anti-ship missile release range, accepting the legal and political risk of firing first on contacts that have not yet made an overtly hostile act. He can wait for the contacts to reach a range at which their hostile intent becomes legally and operationally unambiguous, accepting the tactical risk that by the time that threshold is crossed, his engagement window is severely compressed. Or he can attempt to interpose the must-in between the contacts and the Shiloh, while hailing the contacts on Maritime Channel 16 and requesting they identify themselves and state their intentions. He chooses option 2, modified by elements of option 3. He orders the must-in to position herself 3,000 meters southwest of the Shiloh, between the contacts and the cruiser. He transmits on Channel 16 in Mandarin and English simultaneously, identifying the approaching contacts as being in close proximity to U.S. Navy warships and requesting immediate identification and course change. He puts his weapons systems on hot standby, and he calls 7th Fleet on the tactical circuit and requests immediate clarification on ROE authorities. 7th Fleet's response, routed through the appropriate chain of command, takes 4 minutes and 17 seconds to arrive. In those 4 minutes and 17 seconds, the 14 contacts close from 28 to 18.3 nautical miles. The clarification, when it arrives, authorizes the Shiloh's commanding officer to engage any contact that activates a weapons-associated emission, specifically fire control radar in an active guidance mode, without further reference up the chain. It does not authorize preemptive engagement. The threshold is still evidence of hostile act. It has just been defined more precisely. At 4:19:44, the Shiloh's AN/SPS-67 surface search radar detects a new emission from the contact bearing, not from the USVs themselves, but from a PLAN Type 054A Jiangkai II frigate that has been running without active radar 67 nautical miles to the southwest, behind the USV formation. The emission is identified by the Shiloh's AN/SLQ-32V6 electronic warfare system as an MH-90 fire control radar in active tracking mode. The frigate has illuminated the Shiloh with its fire control radar. Under the updated ROE clarification, this constitutes a weapons-associated emission by a platform that is part of a coordinated hostile action. The The commanding officer authorizes weapons free on the inbound USV contacts and on the Type 05-4A frigate at 04-1951. The 5-inch Mark 45 gun on the Shiloh opens fire at 4-1958, engaging the lead contacts at a range of 17.8 nautical miles, the outer edge of the gun's effective range against small surface targets. The 32-kilogram projectiles are traveling at 808 meters per second, with a time of flight at this range of approximately 39 seconds. The gun fires at its maximum rate of 20 rounds per minute. Against fast-moving, independently maneuvering 10-meter USV targets at 17 nautical miles, the hit probability per round is estimated at between 4 and 8%. Volume of fire matters enormously. The Mustin's 5-inch gun joins the engagement at 4:20:12. Two 5-inch guns, 40 rounds per minute combined, against 14 contacts closing at 42 knots. At 4:22:17, the first confirmed kill is recorded. USV contact track 1104 is struck by a round and ceases tracking, its radar return collapsing. Then 1107 at 4:22:44. Then 1111 and 1109 in rapid succession at 4:23:01 and 4:23:08. 4 kills in under a minute of sustained fire. 10 contacts remaining. Range, 11.4 nautical miles. Speed, 46 knots. Still building. At 4:23:19, the Shiloh launches 2 RIM-66SM-2 Block 3A missiles in surface mode against the Type 05-4A frigate at 67 nautical miles. The SM-2 in surface mode is not its optimal employment. It is primarily an anti-air weapon, but it carries a 115-kilogram blast fragmentation warhead that is effective against lightly armored surface combatants, and the frigate's fire control radar illumination of the Shiloh justifies the engagement. The rounds are in the air. Flight time at this range, approximately 4 minutes 20 seconds. The Type 05-4A's fire control radar goes silent at 4:23:44, 25 seconds after the SM-2 launch. The frigate has detected the incoming missiles. Its MH-90 radar deactivation is a passive defense response. Without the illumination, the SM-2's semi-active guidance loses its reference. Both missiles transition to their backup inertial guidance and begin searching. One acquires the frigate's hull return on its own radar. The SM-2's terminal phase seeker provides limited autonomous capability. The other does not reacquire and impacts the sea, 1.3 nautical miles short of the frigate's last known position. One miss, one potential hit, tracking. Back in the Strait, the 10 remaining USVs have reconfigured their formation. This is not random behavior. The CIWS Swarm's autonomous coordination algorithm, the software that governs the vehicle's relative positioning and tactical maneuvering, has been programmed to respond to attrition by closing the gaps, tightening the formation, and splitting into 2 attack groups that approach the target from diverging bearings. The algorithm executes this reconfiguration in 4.1 seconds. No human being in the loop. No radio communication that can be jammed or delayed. The swarm adapts. The 2 attack groups, 6 contacts in the northeastern group, 4 in the southern, are now approaching the Shiloh from bearings 282 and 247 simultaneously. The guns must split their fire between 2 target groups on different bearings. The fire control solution for each gun must be recomputed as it slews between groups. At 4:24:33, the northeastern contact group, now at 7.2 nautical miles, activates their weapons systems. The Shiloh's EW suite detects active seeker emissions from 4 of the 6 contacts in that group. A C-band active radar in acquisition mode, consistent with the short-range anti-ship missile carried by the CIWS series. The contacts are preparing to fire. The TAO shifts from gun engagement to missile engagement. RIM-162 evolved Sea Sparrow missiles begin launching from the Shiloh's Mark 41 VLS against the inbound contacts. The ESSM has a minimum surface engagement range of approximately 1 nautical mile and an effective engagement envelope against small surface targets. It was designed for airborne threats, and its employment against surface USVs is a non-standard but viable option in the current geometry. 4 ESSMs launch in a 6-second ripple sequence, each round guided by the Shiloh's SPQ-9B fire control radar. The first ESSM impacts USV contact 1116 at 04:24:51. The round's 39-kilogram warhead detonates against the target's hull. The contact disappears from radar. Then 1118 at 4:24:58. Then 1121 at 4:25 and 4 seconds. 3 kills in 13 seconds. At 4:25:09, 4 YJ-12 anti-ship missiles launch from the 3 remaining northeastern contacts simultaneously. The YJ-12 is a supersonic, sea-skimming anti-ship missile with a 250-kilogram warhead, a cruise speed of Mach 2, and a terminal approach altitude of 5 to 8 meters above the surface. Its active radar seeker activates at 15 kilometers from the target. It is not the most capable missile in the PLAN inventory. The YJ-18 and the YJ-21 represent higher tiers of threat. But at 7.2 nautical miles, with a flight time to the Shiloh of approximately 80 seconds, it does not need to be the most capable missile in the inventory. It needs to be fast enough to outpace the defensive response in the time available. 4 YJ-12S inbound. Flight time, 80 seconds. The Shiloh's Aegis combat system shifts to anti-air warfare mode. SM-2 Block 3A rounds begin leaving the VLS in a rapid sequence, 1 every 1.4 seconds. The engagement geometry is compressed. 7.2 nautical miles, Mach 2 incoming, 80-second window. The SM-2 rounds have to be in the air immediately, and their intercept geometry has to be precise, because there is no time for second-shot corrections. The first SM-2 intercepts YJ, 12 track 1 at 4.8 nautical miles. Clean kill. The second intercepts track 3 at 3.9 nautical miles. The third SM-2, targeting track 2, detonates in a proximity fuse activation 22 meters from the missile. Close enough for fragmentation damage, but the YJ-12's warhead section continues forward, inert but kinetic, tumbling. The fourth YJ-12, track 4, survives the SM-2 engagement entirely. The fire control solution was degraded by the proximity of the tumbling debris from track 2, which created a false radar return that pulled the assigned SM-2 off course. 2 kills, 1 damaged and tumbling, 1 intact and closing. The Phalanx CIWS engages. The tumbling debris of track 2 takes a full phalanx burst at 900 meters and is reduced to fragments that fall into the sea. The intact YJ-12, track 4, Mach 1.8 and sea skimming at 6 meters altitude, takes a phalanx burst at 1,100 meters. The 20mm rounds detonate the warhead at 1,100 meters range. The explosion is close enough that the blast and fragmentation pattern reaches the Shiloh's hull. 12 fragments strike the ship, 8 against the port side hull, plating above the waterline, 4 against the lower superstructure of the port bridge wing. No fragment penetrates the hull, but 2 fragments strike the port side, CIWS mount, the secondary phalanx system positioned amidships, and damage its radar tracking assembly. The amidships CIWS is offline. The southern group, 4 contacts, approaching from bearing 247, is 5.4 nautical miles from the Shiloh when the northeastern missile volley is resolved. The Mustin, positioned between the southern group and the cruiser, engages with her 5-inch gun at close range and with 2 ESSMs. 3 of the 4 southern contacts are killed within 90 seconds by combined fire from the Mustin's gun and the Shiloh's EWQ'd ESSM engagement. The 4th southern contact, the last USV in the engagement, closes to 2.1 nautical miles before the Mustin's phalanx engages it. The CIWS fires a 1.4-second burst. The contact explodes at 1.9 nautical miles. No missile is fired from this vehicle. Of the 14 USVs that began the engagement, 14 are destroyed. Of the 4 YJ, 12 missiles fired. 2 are cleanly intercepted. 1 produces a proximity fuse debris field that is destroyed by CIWS, and 1 is destroyed by CIWS at 1,100 meters with a warhead detonation that fragments the Shiloh's amidships CIWS and marks the hull with 12 non-penetrating fragment impacts. The Shiloh is combat capable. The amidships CIWS is offline. Her crew has not sustained any casualties. 12 fragment impacts on the hull and superstructure, none penetrating. The SM-2 targeting the Type 054A frigate, the one that reacquired on its terminal seeker, impacts the frigate's forward superstructure at 042744. The 115-kilogram blast fragmentation warhead detonates against the frigate's bridge structure. Post-engagement signals intelligence indicates that the Type 054A sustained significant damage and lost communications capability for approximately 2 hours before activating a backup system. She did not fire her own anti-ship missiles during the engagement. She did not close to engagement range. Her role in the operation was limited to fire control radar illumination, a function she provided for 47 seconds before the SM-2 launch forced her to go silent. In the aftermath, the question that the entire engagement has generated, in the Pacific Fleet's battle damage assessment, in the 7th Fleet's after-action report, and in the quiet, careful conversations in the E-ring of the Pentagon, is not whether the Shiloh survived. She did. It is about those 4 minutes and 17 seconds. The 4 minutes and 17 seconds between the commanding officer's ROE clarification request and 7th Fleet's response. The 4 minutes and 17 seconds during which the USV swarm closed from 28 to 18.3 nautical miles. The 4 minutes during which human beings higher up the chain of command were making a legal and political decision that the engagement timeline was simultaneously rendering irrelevant. If the Shiloh had waited for that clarification before going to hot standby on her weapon systems, she would have been under missile fire before the authorization arrived. The commanding officer did not wait for the clarification to ready his weapons. He was ready before the authorization. He was ready because he had spent 31 years in the United States Navy, understanding that a decision made 30 seconds too late is the same as no decision at all. The PLAN USV swarm achieved 14 losses for 1 damaged CIWS mount and 12 fragment marks on the Shiloh's hull. The cost of 14 CHFS autonomous surface vessels is assessed at approximately $2.8 million per unit, $39.2 million total for the swarm. The ESSM rounds expended, the SM-2 rounds expended, the gun ammunition expended, and the cost of the amidships CIWS damage repair represent a defensive expenditure of approximately $11.4 million. For once, the cost-exchange ratio did not run heavily in the adversary's favor. The USV swarm is an expensive capability, but here at Navy Legends, cost ratios are not the metric that matters most in this engagement. The metric that matters most is the 4 minutes and 17 seconds. Because the plan's operational planners, reviewing the engagement data from this transit, will not be asking themselves how to make a cheaper USV. They will be asking themselves how to make a USV swarm that generates a decision timeline shorter than 4 minutes and 17 seconds. How to build a swarm that forces the response decision window below the threshold of human authorization speed. How to design a system where, by the time a commander at 7th Fleet has completed the legal and political analysis required to authorize engagement, the swarm has already fired. That is the real weapon that was tested in the Taiwan Strait on November 3rd, 2026. Not the CH-FS, not the YJ-12, the 4-minute and 17-second gap between the moment a human commander needed authorization and the moment it arrived. Every naval planner who reads the after-action report from this engagement will mark that number, and the next swarm will be designed around it. Stay informed. Stay vigilant. I'll see you in the next one.